Thank you for being here. I want to talk today about something that sits at the heart of effective equality, diversity, and inclusion work, EDI. Who leads it and why that matters? EDI is not just a technical discipline, it's relational, cultural, and deeply human. And the people best placed to lead meaningful inclusion are those who have personally experienced exclusion and discrimination themselves, and who have the professional experience to translate that insight into organizational change. For those of us from the Generation X, we've been in the workforce long enough to have seen the full spectrum of what inclusion looks like. We've likely worked under quite a few managers who were so naturally inclusive that we didn't even feel disabled. We simply felt valued, supported, seen, and able to thrive. And we've also experienced the opposite. Environments where the lack of inclusion was deeply impactful. I'll give you an example. In one role, I started work at 7:15, 7:30 a.m. at the very latest, because I struggled with the sensory overload of a busy commute. On paper, that looked like flexibility, as the start of the working day was 9 a.m. But meetings were routinely scheduled at 4 p.m., which meant I couldn't leave before rush hour. So I then stayed until 7, sometimes 7:30, spending nearly 12 hours on site. Management, they saw themselves as very accommodating because I was allowed to start early, but I wasn't able to finish early. In reality, I was working far longer days than colleagues who arrived at 9 and left at 5, as I was there from 7 till 7 sometimes. That's the difference between surface level flexibility and lived inclusion. And people who have personally navigated these dynamics recognize that difference immediately. This brings me to autism and ADHD inclusion, because this is an area where the principle I've just described is often misunderstood. When we talk about race, ethnicity, most organizations instinctively understand that you wouldn't appoint a white person to lead on Black inclusion, even if they were the parent of a Black child. Proximity to someone's experience is not the same as living it. Yet, when it comes to autism and ADHD, the standard suddenly shifts. Time and time again, autistic and ADHD professionals are overlooked for leadership roles in neurodiversity work, while neurotypical parents of autistic children are prioritized instead. And I want to be very clear. Neurotypical parents bring valuable passion and insight, and they are powerful allies. But being a parent is a different experience from being autistic and or having ADHD yourself. And when autistic professionals raise this, we hear, but you're just one autistic person. Everyone is unique. It's a statement that sounds neutral and even right, but it's rarely applied consistently. We don't say to a Black colleague leading on race equity, but you're just one Black person. Everyone is unique. We recognize that lived experience gives depth, credibility, and insight, even though no community is monolithic. What's often missed is something very simple. People are more likely to confide in their own. An autistic employee who is struggling with workplace exclusion is far more likely to approach an autistic colleague, someone who understands the sensory, social, and cognitive realities from the inside, someone who has lived the same patterns, the same misunderstandings, the same exhaustion. That trust is not theoretical, it's relational, and it's essential for meaningful inclusion. Parents understand the system from the outside and an outside perspective on childhood. Neurodivergent adults understand it from the inside. Parents often see the barriers their children face. Neurodivergent adults have lived those barriers, not just in childhood, but also in adulthood. And that's where the professional world is adulthood. Often for decades they've lived it across school, work, healthcare, and society. Parents may advocate for adjustments. Neurodivergent adults know which adjustments actually work because they've had to build their lives around them. And it's important to recognize that children's needs differ significantly from adults' needs. Late diagnosed autistic or ADHD adults without a learning disability often face barriers that come from the invisibility of their disability, navigating workplaces where their needs are questioned, misunderstood, or dismissed. That is very different as an experience from that of an early diagnosed autistic child who may have a visible learning disability or may be non-speaking. Both experiences are valid. They are not the same, and they shape people's understanding of inclusion in very different ways. Both perspectives matter, but they're not interchangeable. And when organizations consistently choose the non-lived experience option, even with the best intentions, the message received by autistic and or ADHD staff is, we want inclusion, but not led by you. That is exclusion dressed up as inclusion. At best, it's performative inclusion rather than genuine inclusion. If we want neurodiversity strategies that genuinely work, strategies that improve recruitment, retention, well-being, and performance, then autistic and ADHD professionals must be at the center of designing and leading them, not as tokens, not as case studies, but as experts. Because we are experts, not only in our fields, but in navigating systems that were not built for us. And that expertise is exactly what organizations need if they want to move beyond awareness into real structural change. So when I talk about EDI leadership, I'm talking about credibility, authenticity, and impact. I'm talking about ensuring that the people shaping inclusion are those who understand discrimination not as a concept, but as a lived reality, and who have the professional skill to turn that insight into action. That's how we build workplaces where people don't just survive, but thrive. And that's how we make inclusion real. Thank you for listening.